We have discussed database design, which we are going to discuss in today's session as well. Database design, entity relationship diagram. Yeah. So in the last session, we have discussed whenever you want to deal with large amount of data, whenever the data is structured. Let's say, what do you mean by structured data? Data in the form of rows and column, right? Then any suppose if you're working in an organization, why there is need of database for that? It is because you might have some uh, department like operation, employee department, and you have to make connection, you have to establish connection between them. You have to find relationship between these tables or database that you have. That is the need of data warehouse, right? So these are the topics that we are going to study. We have discussed introduction about the database, data warehouse, what is data warehouse, structure of a data warehouse. Then what did we discuss?
schemas,
Star schema, right? OLAP versus OLTP, online analytical processing versus online transactional processing, select, extract, transform, load. We have discussed entity constraints, right? And today we are going to discuss referential constraint, semantic constraint, ERD, star schema, and we'll summarize this. Just a minute, my mouse is not working. All right. So, okay. So, what is a data warehouse? We have seen these few points regarding data warehouse, right? It is a subject oriented, integrated repository. It is non-volatile, means the value should not be changed without our valid reason, right? Then it is a time variant, means it contains historical data for analysis, right? Then structure of a data warehouse in which we have facts and dimensions. What do you mean by fact? It's a numerical data, right? Numerical data in the data warehouse. It's a fact. What is dimension? It's a metadata explaining other data attached to the fact variable. The facts and dimensions are equally important for generating actionable insights from a dataset. Then we have discussed the star schema. We have seen few examples for that. Online transactional database versus data warehouse. We have seen few examples related to this. difference. We have seen why there is need of SETL, which is known as select extract transform load. We have seen this as a life cycle for analytics. Right now, our task is to uh, understand the entity constraint one more time. Yeah, can you guys tell me what is entity constraint? What do you mean by entity constraint? Yes. What is your understanding for entity constraint? Yes, everyone. किसी को याद है? Anybody have? What's your understanding of entity constraint?
Like not null and primary key, which is primary
Hmm?
key unique.
Just a minute. What's your understanding of entity constraint?
Sir, sir, having some rules in the table, like the column must not be null, or having some unique content like for ID,
Mm-hmm.
or giving the column as a primary key.
Right. Suppose you have two table, employee table and department table. So we cannot simply blindly put whatever data you want in whatever table you want it, right? There might be some rules behind what data can go inside a table in what form. This is known as constraint. So we have three types of constraint: entity constraint, referential constraint, and semantic constraint. Semantic constraint. So we have started our discussion with the entity constraint. What's your entity constraint? So employee ID must not be repeated. It should be unique, right? So employee ID unique. We have discussed the uniqueness constraint for that. Okay. Then name. We should not put uniqueness constraint to the name for this column. It can be any name, obviously. So every employee is not only unique, but also I also want to ensure that every employee has employee ID. So it should not be null. So we have added another discussion for this, which is a primary key, which means it should be unique and it should be not null. So it is known as PK or primary constant. Every employee is not only unique. I also want to ensure that every employee has employee ID. So uniqueness and not null. We have discussed this, right? Now it's time to discuss the another constant, which is known as referential constant. Referential constant. So see over here now. For an example, now let us try to understand a referential constant. The referential constant comes into play when you want to constrain the values taken by the column. You want to constrain what? Values taken by column. So if you have a table और वो टेबल में कौन सा वैल्यूज आपको पास करना है वो उसमें आपको कंस्ट्रेंट डालना है तो the referential constant comes into the picture. Like let us take two table. First is employee table. Second is, let's say, department table. Department table. Now what I want is, so uh, we have two tables. Let's write down few columns related to this tables. We have employee ID We have name of the employees, we have department ID, and in department table, we have department ID and department name, right? So, see over here, referential constant comes into play when you want to constrain the values taken by the column in one table based on the values that exist in another table, right? अगर आपको एक कॉलम में ऐड करना है बेस्ड ऑन द अदर कॉलम, फॉर एग्जांपल ये डिपार्टमेंट आईडी है, वो डिपार्टमेंट टेबल में है ऑलरेडी, बट उसको लिंक करना आपको किसमें, एम्प्लॉयज टेबल में यहाँ पे, तो व्हाट यू शुड डू,
So join करेंगे.
सी, so let's add a definition for referential constraint. Constraints, when you want to constrain the values taken by a column in one table based on the values exist in another table, right? So the department table has got department ID, department name, as we have discussed, and we can already specify uniqueness constant as part of the entity constant. I could have said that employee ID is actually a primary key. For example, if I can guarantee that it will never be null, employee ID will, it will never be null. And then there are no other constant that I have put so far for this table. So अपने पास कौन सा constant है? Employee ID is a primary key. This is what we have, right? Now, if I don't put any other constraint, what I can do is I can enter whatever values as part of the employee table. And for all the attributes, including employee ID name, employee ID, name, and department ID. If I don't put any constraint, I can add any values over there. Yes or no? Suppose in this particular example that you're seeing, you will see that two rows in employee table in employee ID as E01 and E02. You can see that department ID that is used in this example for, let's say, इसका department है D04, इसका है D01, and इसका department, let's say department table, in department table we have department ID D01, D02, D03, finance, HR, and IT, right? Name you can give any name. Let's say my name का नाम भी N001, N002, and so on. There will be another employee E02. So what we were discussing in this example, there are two rows, E01 and E02, which is respect to D04 and D01. In general, sometimes what you want to say is that the attribute values of certain columns should not take any value that is permitted. But I want to constrain in this particular example that I want to ensure that employees are assigned to only those departments that exist, right? Employees को employees are assigned to only department that exist in the department table. It cannot be another department. डिपार्टमेंट जो मौजूद है आपके कंपनी में वो ही डिपार्टमेंट से आपका एम्प्लॉयज रिलेटेड होगा ऑब्वियसली, राइट? सो it is mentioned in another table called department here, which says that there are three departments, D01, D02, D03, and D04, sorry, D01, D02, and D04. Let's say D04, right? Which is finance, HR, and IT departments, right? So how do you specify this constraint? This type of constraint is referred to as referential integrity constraint, which means I'm putting a constraint on what values a specific column can take based on the values that are already exist in some other table. That is why in this example, let there be any number of employees, all the employees must be necessarily belong to those department, or in other words, the attribute values, if you look at the values that are available in the department ID, it should be one of those values over here, one of these three values, right? So that is referred to as referential integrity constraint. It is known as referential integrity 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 constraints, right? Now see over here, let me introduce a new terminology over here. So the attribute which is getting constraint is referred to as a foreign key. It is known as foreign key. So in this example, this is referred to as department ID of the employee table. Department of the ID of the employee table is your foreign key. So ये जो है ये, this one is your foreign key, right? So foreign key, why it is called as foreign key? Because this happens to be a key of some other table. So this is referencing a key of the department table. That is why this is a department ID in the employee table is referred to as foreign key. So whenever we are specifying foreign key, we, unlike the primary key or uniqueness key, you can just specify, you can circulate, you can underline it and say it as foreign key, right? So you cannot blindly say that this attribute is a foreign key. What you have to say that is department ID of employee is a foreign key, which references to department ID of employees foreign key, which refers to the department table, and to be more specific, which references the primary key of the department table. तो ये जो department ID है department table में, that is your primary key. This is your primary key. Primary key for what? Primary key for department table. Employee ID है. Employee ID क्या है? Primary key है. तो primary key किसके लिए है वो? It is for employee table. And we already have discussed कि we can have only our RDBMS, Relational Database Management System, can only allow us to have a single primary key. Only one primary key is allowed. So एक टेबल के लिए सिर्फ एक ही प्राइमरी की रह सकती है, but it can have n number of primary key. So once you add the constraint, then when you are using the particular database, the database will give you an error when you are trying to insert a row which is having a department ID which is absent in the department table. Suppose मैं यहाँ पे D05 add कर, मुझे error देगा वो. Why? Because it's already absent in my department table. I cannot add any department ID associated to the employee which is not present in this department table. So this is why it is referred to as foreign key. Now, is it clear for everyone, this part?
Yes, sir.
Anybody have any questions over here?
No, sir.
Right? We'll see the difference between primary key and foreign key somewhat later. Now, so we already talk about unique key. We already talk about primary key. We already talk about foreign key. Just to confuse you a little bit, let us try to understand. Let me throw some comparison between these keys, right? To begin with, foreign key. Let's compare these keys. Comparison between these keys. To begin with, let's add a foreign key. Foreign key. Foreign key is not a key at all. Why it is not a key at all? Because it is a characteristics of a key that has to be unique, and it is a primary key of the another table, right? So another table से आप एक table ले लो. It's not a key. ये department ID primary key है. We are just referencing this department ID of the department table in our employee table. So generally we often say it as it's not a key at all, because characteristics of a key क्या है? What is the characteristics of a key? Characteristics of a key. What are the characteristics of key that we have? It has to be unique. And you can clearly say that here that there can be more than one employees with belonging to the same department. I can add new row, let's say E03, who works for department, let's say D01. So obviously वो uniqueness constant valid invalid हो गया वहाँ पे. So foreign key need not necessarily be unique key, and foreign key need not to be unique. We can have an additional constant that it has to be unique under circumstances. So to add a point for foreign key, it need not to be unique. So difference number one between foreign key and primary key. Primary key cannot be unique. Foreign key need not to be unique. Primary key unique ही चाहिए आपको, and foreign key unique हो सकती है. Sorry, it need not to be unique. Second difference that you have is difference is primary key comparing uh, with foreign key and primary key. If we compare these two keys for any given table, there can exist only one primary table, a primary key. There can exist for any given table, there can exist only one primary key. So you have to make up your mind what is that single attribute which will never be empty, never be what? Never be null. Yes or no? What is primary key? It never be empty and it should never be null,
No.
which will always be unique, right? So you have to identify the right. So every table can have exactly only one primary key, whereas a given table can have n number of or any number of foreign key. Can it be possible? We can have multiple foreign key. Can it be possible? Yes or no, everyone?
Yes, sir.
We can have n number of foreign key, right? देखो अगर मैं और एक डिपार्टमेंट ऐड कर रहा हूँ, मतलब टेबल ऐड कर रहा हूँ, लेट्स से प्रोडक्ट टेबल, राइट? यहाँ पे मेरे पास है प्रोडक्ट आईडी और मेरे पास है प्रोडक्ट नेम. प्रोडक्ट नेम, product ID is a primary key, and here if I'm using product ID in my employee table, which product he is using. So product key is your foreign key in your employee table. Product ID, product ID is your primary key in your product table, but it is a foreign key in your employee table. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Right, sir.
Right? So second difference is the primary key. There can be only one primary key for a given table, but a table can contain any number of foreign keys. In other words, in more specific fashion, in more technical sense, in other words, we can say what we are saying is a table can reference many other tables, right? Table can reference many other tables. So that is another very important difference of course. If you compare it with unique key and single table can have any number of unique keys, you can say name is unique. You can say mobile number is unique in that particular table. You can specify any number of unique keys, but as far as primary key is concerned, there can be only one primary key and any number of foreign key. And one last thing I want to mention with respect to foreign key, the foreign key says that it can has to reference the column of another table, which happens to be a primary key. That alone is not sufficient. The value that I'm actually inserting into the employee table, that value actually I'm inserting into the employee table. That department must be existing in the department table. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि मैं एम्प्लॉय टेबल में डिपार्टमेंट आईडी ऐड कर रहा हूँ जो डिपार्टमेंट टेबल में ऑलरेडी प्रेजेंट नहीं है. ऐसा नहीं हो सकता. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, suppose I'm creating a new department called estate management. I'm creating a new department called estate management, which is department number 5. And there are, it just stuck in some approval process in our organization. It just stuck in in some approval process. But then I have already lined up people to join that particular department. So what I cannot say is, I cannot say that employee number 4 who is joining with this department E0 or D05, uh, who is joining with this into our company, which is going to be in department 5. You cannot say that वो department आ रहा है, right? Can we say like this? Yes, department 05 आ रहा है, employee already present है. ऐसा हो सकता है कभी organization में, right? We cannot say that, which means we have to, if in that case we have to insert a row department 05 in the department table first before you can designate somebody in the database as belonging to department 05, which means the foreign key restriction not only is not only referencing an attribute, but the specific attribute values that are existing at that particular point of time, right? So if you really run up and end up in this kind of situation, then you have to manage this piece of information outside of the system only after you get the necessary authorization to insert a row department or row of department number 05. You should add employees belonging to that particular department, of course. Just a small workaround I can give you is, let's say अगर आपको एम्प्लॉय टेबल में एम्प्लॉय ऐड करना है जो डिपार्टमेंट 05 में रहने वाला है ऑब्वियसली, बट डिपार्टमेंट 05 नहीं है आपके पास. So small workaround that you can do is, you can insert initially the employee into a database and put a null value for the specific branch department. You can put null values so that it gives more of one difference between a primary key and a foreign key, right? So null values put करके employees आप add कर सकते हो. This is small workaround that we can do. So another difference that we have is between primary key and foreign key is, foreign key can take null values, but a primary key can never take null values. Another difference. Third difference. Foreign key can take null values, but primary key can not take null values. So initially, I will put it as once the department gets created, once that row gets inserted into the table, and then I can go back to the specific employee and then I can update that employee's branch ID to be D05 so that the referential integrity for you, which is implemented using this term called foreign keys. So ये हो गया आपका foreign keys के related और referential integrity concept. Now is this thing clear for everyone?
Yes.
Well, go through this. I'll give you 5 minutes for you. You can go through this. If you have any questions, you can ask. right? Now let's go to another constraint that we have is semantic constraint.
Hello, sir.
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Sir, how can you identify the difference between primary key and unique key, sir? What is difference between this?
Primary key and
Unique key,
यूनिक ना. प्राइमरी की में एडिशनल कांस्टेंट क्या है? व्हाट इज प्राइमरी की?
null वैल्यू नहीं होना चाहिए.
नल नहीं होना चाहिए. और एक है ना, और एक है. व्हाट इज दैट?
In table only one primary key.
नहीं नहीं. सी, प्राइमरी की इज, इट शुड बी यूनिक एंड इट शुड नॉट बी नल. सो डिफरेंस यहाँ पे आ गया ना. प्राइमरी की क्या है? यूनिक प्लस नॉट नल है. और यूनिक की क्या है? सिर्फ यूनिक है, वो नल रह सकती
Yes, sir.
है. इज इट क्लियर? देखो, सपोज मेरे पास प्रोडक्ट क्वांटिटी है, वो आपको यूनिक रहना चाहिए, ऐसे आपने स्पेसिफाई किया प्रोडक्ट क्वांटिटी. बट प्रोडक्ट क्वांटिटी नल रह सकता है. यस और नो? 1 2 3 4 5.
Yes, sir.
तो ये प्राइमरी की हो गया क्या आपका?
नहीं, no,
नहीं हो गया ना. प्राइमरी की नहीं हो गया ये.
no.
दैट्स ऑल. आई होप यू आर गेटिंग इट
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you.
नाउ. ओके, सो now you may be wondering, before semantic constraint, no, we'll discuss one more. You may be wondering if a table can have any number of unique keys and any number of not null constraint and any number of foreign keys, then why did we say that there can be only one primary key? Why did we say that there can be only one primary key? Suppose you have a requirement. I also mentioned that primary key is nothing but values can values have to be unique and it can never be null, right? What if you have more than one attribute for which you want to have the same set of constant? For example, suppose आपने एक टेबल है एम्प्लॉय टेबल, उसमें एम्प्लॉय आईडी को प्राइमरी की स्पेसिफाई किया है ऑब्वियसली, और ये है डिपार्टमेंट आईडी. आपको क्या करना है? आपको सेम सेट ऑफ कांस्टेंट देना है अलग कॉलम. मतलब फॉर एग्जांपल प्राइमरी की, व्हाट इज प्राइमरी की? इट शुड बी यूनिक, इट शुड बी नॉट null. What if you have more than one attribute for which you want to have the same set of constant, saying that it has to be unique and it has to be not null. मतलब और एक सपोज एक कॉलम ऐड करना है. आई डोंट नो, वी कैन हैव एनी कॉलम, एनी नेम ऑफ द कॉलम. लेट्स से ब्रांच. ब्रांच चाहिए यूनिक और ब्रांच चाहिए मुझे नॉट नल एज वेल, right? For which you can specify that it has to be unique and not null. That is certainly not the case. मतलब ये प्राइमरी की हो गया क्या फिर? ब्रांच क्या है? ब्रांच का कांस्टेंट यूनिक है और नॉट नल है. इज इट अ प्राइमरी की?
No, sir.
All we are saying is that DBMS expects only one designated key, which is given that spatial status called primary key or a PK. DBMS is allows us to specify only one designated key, which is given that special status called primary key. But every other key for which you want to impose the same set of constraint, suppose that there is a mobile number. Yeah, let's consider that mobile number. Mobile number. There's one constraint for mobile number. What along with the employee ID, you want to ensure that not everybody must have a mobile number. must give their mobile number, and it is not optional. It has to be unique mobile numbers. It cannot be shared. For example, if that is the constraint that you want to specify, you can say that employee ID is primary key, and you can specify similar kind of constraint on mobile number without calling it as primary key. तो आपको ऐसा लिखना होता है SQL में, एम्प्लॉय आईडी एज प्राइमरी की. सो आपको इस सिस्टम को समझेगा कि एम्प्लॉय आईडी इज प्राइमरी की. So you have to specify which is a primary key, right? So what you say is my mobile number is unique and not null. And see, effectively you have the impact of a primary key. Effectively you have the impact for primary key for mobile number, but the RDBMS does not permit you to give the designation of primary key to more than one attribute, right? So hope that clarifies this whole entity constraints and referential constraint. Now let us go to semantic constraint. Let us move on to semantic constraint. Semantics in English. What do you mean by semantics in English? Meaning, right? If you search semantics, what do you mean by that? Study of meaning in any language. So semantic in English means meaning. उसका meaning ही meaning है obviously. So if you want to specify additional constant on the values that a specific attribute can take, that this is where you can use the semantic constant to specify that, for example, the most common semantic constant is a very basic data type that you want to say that this string or this particular attribute can take number of this particular attribute can take string, or if it can take numbers, then what is the size of that numbers, or if it is a string, what is the maximum length of the string, or what is the minimum length of that string. Suppose abhi, for an example, mobile number, is it a string or number? Yes, everyone.
It's a number.
Number.
Right. So mobile number is a number, is a number data type. So अगर आप मोबाइल नंबर ऐड कर रहे हो डेटा में, तो उसका लेंथ कितना होना चाहिए?
3 numbers.
हाँ, यहाँ पे 10 नंबर होना चाहिए, बट ये आप स्पेसिफाई करना चाहिए ना आपके डेटा को. यू हैव टू स्पेसिफाई दिस. सपोज इफ यू आर एडिंग नेम, सो मैक्सिमम नेम आप कितने लेटर तक ऐड कर सकते हो?
Maximum 50.
तो वो भी स्पेसिफाई करना चाहिए आपको, आपके सिस्टम को. तो दिस इज नोन एज सिमेंटिक कंस्ट्रेंट. और व्हाट इज द मिनिमम नंबर, a minimum size of the number it can take for string? What is the maximum length of string? This would come under semantic constraint. Incidentally, you can also have a few other constraint saying not null constraint, right? It may not be unique, but you want to ensure that everybody specifies their, I don't know, so whether a gender attribute, you want to ensure that you definitely capture that particular attribute for every employee. So you can specify that gender is not null, so that would constraint would become a semantic constraint. Gender must be male or female, or it cannot be a null, right? Another example is that we already saw that you can use a notion of foreign key wherein you want to constrain the set of values to the set of values which appear in some other table, right? What if I want to constrain based on my own set of values which is not there in some other table? This is referred to as enumeration. मतलब आपको एक टेबल एक कॉलम ऐड करना है. So this is little advanced part, but suppose आपको एक कॉलम ऐड करना है and which is not part of another table, which is not a foreign key, that is known as enumeration. Suppose I want to say now there is a bank account table and there is account type attribute, bank account table, and there is account type attribute in this table. In account type, I want to ensure that this account type attribute can take only one of these three values. It can be savings, it can be current, और it can be investment. इसके अलावा मेरे पास अकाउंट टाइप नहीं है, तो ये हो गया. इसका ऑलरेडी टेबल नहीं है, दूसरा टेबल नहीं, इन विच यू हैव अकाउंट टाइप. अगर टेबल में अकाउंट टाइप रहता था दूसरे टेबल में, तो ये अकाउंट टाइप फॉरेन की रहता था. बट मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ, मुझे अकाउंट टाइप में ये सिर्फ तीन ही चाहिए. आइदर इट कैन बी सेविंग्स, और इट कैन बी करंट, और इट कैन बी इन्वेस्टमेंट. सो दिस इज नोन एज एन्यूमरेशन, राइट? These three type of accounts that are permitted now. One way is to create a new table called investment and then have these three rows there and specify it as a foreign key. Many times that's an overkill. So if you want to constraint based on a small set of fixed set of values, instead of using foreign key, you are better off specifying it as semantic constant and use the enumeration facility to say that it can take only this set of values. This is another example of semantic constant, right? Second example ho gaya enumeration. Enumeration is a second example. Is it clear, everyone? First example is, let's say, mobile number. Uske, what is the maximum length of that is permissible for your mobile number, or what is the maximum length permissible for your string? That's your first example. Now, depending upon the DBMS that you are using, you will be able to specify many different kinds of semantic constraint. So you should refer to the respective documentation of your product that you are using and look under the constraint section. You should refer to the respective documentation of your product and look under the section. Which section? There's one section which is known as constraint in that documentation. And more specifically, for creating a table, when you are creating the table internal, it tell you what are all the options that you have for specifying semantic integrity constraint. तो semantic integrity constraint आप कहाँ पे देखते हो? It is already available in documentation, official documentation of any product out there. Suppose if you are using MySQL, it is already available in that. If you are using Microsoft SQL, it's already available in that documentation. So it is advisable to go under this documentation and read about the semantic constraint. Now this summarizes our semantic constraint. Now, last but not the least, we have ERD and star scheme. So anybody over here is having any questions in semantic constraint, you can ask. Yes, anybody have any doubts?
Sir, in what use case generally we use foreign key or primary key?
It what?
Like फॉरेन की को एग्जैक्टली अपन कब यूज करना चाहिए और प्राइमरी की को एग्जैक्टली कब यूज करना चाहिए?
Okay, primary key आपको specify मतलब it's compulsory to specify while creating a column. अगर आप SQL मतलब अपन देखने वाले आगे, if you are creating a table, so आपको column create करने पड़ते हैं. वो column को आपको specify करना पड़ता है कि what's your primary key, what's your foreign key. तो इसका यूज नहीं है. बट अगर आपको अनादर आपके पास अलग अलग टेबल है, सपोज इफ यू हैव अ डिपार्टमेंट टेबल, इफ यू हैव एम्प्लॉय टेबल, तो एम्प्लॉय टेबल मतलब ये आपके ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में अलग अलग डिपार्टमेंट हो सकते हैं ऑब्वियसली, राइट? ये डिपार्टमेंट है, ये एम्प्लॉय है, ये अलग टेबल है. तो इन दोनों को आपको रिलेट करना है. मतलब ये टेबल में जो वैल्यूज है डिपार्टमेंट के, वो ही डिपार्टमेंट में आपके एम्प्लॉयज काम कर सकते हैं ऑब्वियसली। ऐसा आपके पास एम्प्लॉय नहीं रहेगा जो एक डिपार्टमेंट में काम कर रहा होगा और वो डिपार्टमेंट प्रेजेंट ही नहीं है आपके ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में, राइट? सो ऐसा इट्स कॉन्वीनियंट टू यूज इट एज अ फॉरेन की, राइट? मतलब आपके मल्टीपल टेबल को कनेक्शन बनाना है आपको, तो फॉरेन की कॉन्सेप्ट इंपॉर्टेंट है। और प्राइमरी की क्यों इंपॉर्टेंट है? बिकॉज सपोज एम्प्लॉय आईडी आपको देना है, तो आप ऐसा नहीं बोल सकते हो कि एम्प्लॉय आईडी एक ऐसा एम्प्लॉय है जिसके पास एम्प्लॉय आईडी ही नहीं है और वो आपकी कंपनी में काम कर रहा है। ऐसा हो सकता है क्या कभी? नहीं हो सकता है। दैट इज वाई एम्प्लॉय आईडी इज अ प्राइमरी की। तो प्राइमरी की एक स्ट्रिक्ट आप रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशन डाल रहे हो वो टेबल पे कि वो जो पर्टिकुलर एट्रीब्यूट है उसमें नल वैल्यूज नहीं होना चाहिए और वो यूनिक ही रहना चाहिए, राइट? सो एवरी टेबल must have or will have a primary key, one primary key.
Okay, sir.
Now what we were discussing is क्या दिखा रहा? हाँ, primary key in how do you create? See, this is how you create table. Suppose मैं employee table create कर रहा हूँ, उसमें employee ID डाल रहा हूँ, ये डेटा टाइप है, ये नॉट नल है, और आपको स्पेसिफाई करना पड़ता है कि प्राइमरी की कौन सा है आपके टेबल में, right? We'll see this thing, don't worry, it's not that difficult, it's very simple, right? I think we are good to go for the next module, which is entity relationship diagram. But इसके लिए I need an entity relationship diagram. We have over here. I do have my entity relationship diagram. Let's say this. इसमें है क्या? Okay, it's there. With multiple applications. Yeah. Anybody have any questions now in this module? Semantic constant, you can ask. Right? Anyone have any doubts? Okay, I'll take a silence as a no. Let's go to the next part. So now that you have learned about various type of constant that are used to restrict the values in a database, the precursor to designing a database is drawing a well-defined entity relationship diagram. So what is ERD? It is entity relationship diagram. So an entity relationship diagram, or ERD, can be thought of as a map of the database schema. We can visualize the structure of an entire schema and answer the following question just by looking at the ERD. So ERD क्यों बनाते हैं? Why there is a entity relationship diagram? You can ask. You can answer the following questions that we are writing down. So what are the tables that it contains? First question. Second question is, what are the columns? What are the columns that each table contains? Third question is, what are the data types and constraints for each column. Fourth question is, what are the relationships between the various tables? So as you can see, the ERD entity relationship diagrams, ERDs can extremely useful to get an overall idea of a database, but in very less time, to get overall idea in very less time. Now we'll learn about them. What is entity relationship diagram and what are the different things that we have in ERD? We'll just try to understand. But before that, let's take out an image for entity relationship diagram in SQL. I think this is good. but इसमें one to one ही है, multiple नहीं. This is very good. This is nice. This is what I want. Let's take this, copy, and resume here. Right. So if you see in this example, can you see? I'll just zoom it a little bit. Can you see? ये देख रहे हो आप? सिंगल लाइन, यहाँ पे सिंगल लाइन है, यहाँ पे सर्कल है, यहाँ पे सिंगल लाइन है ऐसे, और ये है. Can you see this, everyone? Small.
Yes, sir.
Is it visible for everyone? सर्कल है, डबल लाइन है, सिंगल लाइन है. यहाँ पे डबल लाइन है, यहाँ पे सिंगल लाइन है, यहाँ पे सर्कल है, सिंगल लाइन है, यहाँ पे सिंगल लाइन है. सो व्हाट डू यू थिंक, ये ऐसा ही ड्रॉ किया है क्या उन लोगों ने? देयर हैज टू बी सम मीनिंग, राइट? यस और नो एवरीवन? मतलब एक ऐसे दो टेबल ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं, जब मन में आया तो डबल लाइन दे रहा हूँ मैं, जब मन में आया तो ये दे रहा हूँ. ऐसा किया है क्या वहां पे? इज इट द केस? सपोज ये दोनों टेबल ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं, तो इसमें सर्कल बना रहा हो, इसमें ये कर रहा हो, इसमें सिंगल लाइन या डबल लाइन कर रहा हो. व्हाट डू यू थिंक? There has to be some meaning for this double line, single line. Yes or no, everyone? Can you guys agree on this?
Yes, sir.
Right? So, let's discuss this. Now, let us spend some time trying to understand how to go about designing a database. So, we already seen that for designing a database, what we need eventually is a set of tables, the set of columns associated with those tables. And what are the constraints for that table? So the entity constraint, referential constraint, and semantic constraint we have discussed. Now let us try to understand, how do you arrive at them? How do you know that these are the tables that I want? How do you know that these are the foreign keys that I need to know? Or how do you even document it, right? So the questions are, how do you arrive at the entity constraints, referential constraints, and semantic constraints? How do you arrive at it? So we are going to be using specific modeling technique called entity relationship diagram, which is also abbreviated as ER diagram or ER models. So we will use those concepts to understand how do you represent the database design in the form of pictures and visual icons. So let us again Just like the way we looked at vocabulary and terminology associated with the relational data model, I'll quickly walk you through the terminology associated with the entity relationship model. So the first terminology that we have to be familiar with is called entity. What is entity? To begin with, entity is nothing but a table, a small piece of information that you want to track in the database. So let us start working through this particular example. In this particular example, so we can have entities that we want to track, which might be product, right? Just a minute. We'll write down the definition for entity. It is nothing but a table in the schema. Table in the schema. For example, orders and payments. Both are the entity types. Now, मेरे पास एक टेबल है, मेरे पास एक entity relationship diagram है. In that, now it's literally difficult to draw that, but I will explain it just by mere drawing that particular um, entity relationship diagram. So product line and product का मुझे चाहिए. Product line, product, customer. I'm not drawing it. I think I might get it on web. Customers, entity relationship diagram. सेंटर में मुझे चाहिए कस्टमर. Fact has to be customer. चलो, this is also fine. ठीक है, ठीक. I am taking this out. Copy. I'm going to paste it over here. देखो, अभी अपने टेबल में just consider an example. So let us start working with this particular example. A product, let's say washing machine. Product में product name है ना? In this product, can you observe this product name, everyone? So let's consider product as product name is a specific product that I want to track. Over there, it could be a camera as a specific product. Camera भी रह सकता है in this product, or that I want to track. So the camera, washing machine are known as entities. But then instead of scattering the entities all over my database, I will say let me group those entities together into a single container. Let me group these entities together with single container. And we'll call that as entity type. So entity type क्या है? Is a collective name. Entity type is a collective name. It's a collective name given to a branch of entities, but then you say, okay, what are the common between those entities, right? What is holding those entities together? Then we will have set of attributes that can be associated with the entity tags, which means that if you have 100 entities of a given entity type, or what it means is each of those entities of that entity type will have set of attributes that are associated with the entity type. For example, what it means is if you have 100 entities, cameras, washing machine, ऐसे आपके पास 100 entities of a given entity type. Or what it means is uh, each one of those entities of that entity type will have this set of attributes that are associated with it. For example, I said product is an entity type. Product क्या है? Entity type है. और entity type में entities है. Product में मेरे पास entities है. Washing machine है, camera है, it can be anything. So washing machine, we can say that it will be associated with these attributes called product code, product name, product line, product scale, product vendor, product description, quantity in stock, buy price, and maximum selling price. Okay, so these are all the attributes that are associated with every entity belonging to that entity type. So you can see in this picture that it is an example of entity relationship diagram. This belongs to entity relationship diagram, in which we have represented 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 entity types, right? So these 8 entity types constitute of your database. Is it clear now, everyone? What is entity? What is entity type? What is attribute? So example क्या है entity का? Entity type का example क्या है? Product. Product is one entity type. Order detail is another entity type. Order is another entity type. ये product में मेरे पास entities है. वो है different products. Camera, laptop, mobile, television. These are the different entities. And attribute क्या है? वो कैमरा का specification. वो washing machine का specification. वो टीवी का specification. Now is it clear, everyone? Entity type is product. Entity is, let's say, washing machine. And attribute. What is attribute? What do you mean by attribute? It's specification of that particular washing machine. I think I have made this clear. If you have any questions, you can ask. Anybody have any questions?
हेलो सर.
Yeah.
सर ये एंटिटी के बीच में वो रिलेशन कैसे शो किया सर? वन टू मेनी, मेनी टू ने कैसे होता है?
हाँ, वो देखने वाले. तो
ओके.
वो जो लाइन है ना, डबल लाइन और सर्कल, वही 1 to 1 है, 1 to many है, वही है. बट वो देखने वाले. तो बाय द एंड ऑफ दिस सेशन यू गाइस विल अंडरस्टैंड कि एंटिटी रिलेशनशिप डायग्राम को कैसे रीड करना है आपको, राइट? सो हियर कम्स योर सेकेंड terminology, which is attribute. Attribute. So it is a column in an entity type. For example, order number is an attribute in the order entity type, right? Relationship type. So there are lines. If you see lines between this table, they define the relationship among the tables. This can be of various types based on their cardinalities. So there are 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, many, many, 2, many relationship. So you have a relationship type. So the database design, we have to be able to say that what is the relationship between these entity types. Those relationships are represented using the lines that you see in this particular picture. So let me zoom it a little bit. I think it's visible now. Relationship types can exist across multiple entity types. Okay, so let us take a few examples to understand the notation and understand the meaning that is captured as part of this relationship type. So relationship types can be expressed using cardinalities, and cardinalities are can be of multiple types. We can have one-to-one cardinality, one-to-many cardinality, 0 or 1 to 0, or many cardinalities, or many-to-many cardinalities, right? 0 to 1, 1 to many, ऐसे आपके पास types है cardinalities के, and so on. What it means is, on the left hand side and the right hand side, there can be multiple cardinalities that are associated. Typically, it can be 0, 1 or many. तो 0 to 1 हो सकता है, 1 to 0 हो सकता है, many to 1 हो सकता है, 1 to many हो सकता है, 0 to many हो सकता है. It can be on either side. So let us walk through some example to understand how it is represented and what is the interpretation of that. So let us try to understand the relationship that exists between product lines and product. As you can see, it is firstly as shown in the form of single line. तो product line और product आपके पास है क्या product line? अच्छा यहाँ पे नहीं है. चलो यहाँ पे भी देख सकते हो. I'll just take this image as well and I'm going to take it over here. देखो अभी प्रोडक्ट और ऑर्डर या फिर कस्टमर और ऑर्डर इन दोनों में रिलेशनशिप अपने को देखना है, राइट. बट बिफोर दैट लेट मी टेक एन एग्जांपल of product line and product. So firstly it is shown as in the form of single line, and that is your first indication that there is some relationship between product line and product. Then we have to look at the notation that are mentioned there, right? So this is one specific notation which is also referred to as the CRUD notation, wherein you can see that you will see multiple lines. What those interpretation are, I'll tell you in a minute. So if you are seeing in general, if you understand this particular domain, what it says is there is one product line called, for example, washing machine is my product line. So if washing machine is my product line and there can be many products associated with it. So the information that I want to capture is a classic example of one to many cardinalities, one to many relation. So मेरे पास product है और मेरे पास product line है यहाँ पे. और उन दोनों में कनेक्शन कैसा है? तो कनेक्शन है आपका यहाँ पे दो वर्टिकल लाइन है ऐसे और दो लाइन है और यहाँ पे गोल है, ऐसा सर्कल है और ये ऐसा है. So this is known as a specific notation which is also referred to as CRUD notation. You'll see that it is 1 to many. It's an example of one to many, right? तो अभी अपने एग्जांपल में one to many का कौन सा एग्जांपल है? Let us try to understand. ये भी one to many है, मतलब customer can place many orders. Customer can place many orders, but there is only one order associated with the customer. बेसिकली ऑर्डर आईडी एक ही रह सकता है एक कस्टमर के लिए, बट एक कस्टमर बहुत सारे ऑर्डर प्लेस कर सकता है. इज इट क्लियर? इज इट मेकिंग सेंस एवरीवन?
Yes, sir.
राइट. वन टू मेनी रिलेशनशिप इन ईआरडी. देखो अभी इसमें कोर्स इंस्ट्रक्टर, एक इंस्ट्रक्टर मेनी कोर्सेस सिखा सकता है, बट एक कोर्स एक ही इंस्ट्रक्टर सिखा सकता है. आई थिंक दिस इज कंफ्यूज लिटिल बिट. जस्ट अ मिनट. let's say order an item. Let's take this, right? ये जो है ना, ये this is known as one and this is known as many, right? So product ID or product B है. There's n number of example you can have. See this thing. Well, now I think you are understanding. This vertical line is referred to as one and this is known as many. And a book can have many pages, but a page is only associated with one book. राइट. सपोज देयर इज वन पेज, पेज नंबर 102. उस पे लेट्स से विराट कोहली का एक ऑटोग्राफ है एंड दैट इज इन दिस बुक. सो ये बुक में मल्टीपल पेजेस रह सकते, यस और नो. बट वो जो ऑटोग्राफ है 102 पेज, वो एक ही बुक में रह सकता है, मतलब वो सेम बुक में रह सकता है. सपोज बुक है 1. इज इट क्लियर नाउ एवरीवन? I think we should not discuss it significantly or rigorously. It's very simple, one to many relationship. Now in this thing, इसमें अगर ऐसा relationship रहेगा, तो this is known as one to many. We refer to as one to many. So how do you interpret when somebody says? अभी interpretation देखना है आपको. देखिए अभी I don't have this example, I don't have this figure जिससे लेके मैं एक explanation दे रहा हूँ आपको. मैं वो ड्रॉ भी नहीं कर सकता फिजिकली, बट आई विल गिव यू इन टुमारो सेशन दैट एंटिटी रिलेशनशिप डायग्राम. सो सी, देयर इज वन टू मेनी रिलेशनशिप आपको पता चला है, बट उसको आपको बोलना कैसे? हाउ डू यू इंटरप्रेट दिस व्हेन समबडी सेज देयर इज वन टू मेनी रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन प्रोडक्ट लाइंस एंड प्रोडक्ट? कौन सा रिलेशनशिप है? वन टू मेनी. सो द डेटाबेस पिक फॉर यू. Somebody says that, it immediately comes into your mind that you have to translate that into two sentences. It's very simple. See, what are these two sentences? And those two sentences actually are reflected in that notation. The first sentence, it says, you can see that on the right hand side, there's a notation which has shows 0 followed by multiple lines. 0 followed by multiple lines like this. Okay, so how do you read that? You say that every product line which is the on the left hand side associated with 0 or more products. Why 0? ये 0 है, इसका 0 है, और ये है 1. Do we have something like this? Yeah, see over here, the circle is 0. Circle is 0 and 1. 0 and 1. ये भी 0 and 1 है. So in that entity relationship diagram that I am discussing with you is यहाँ पे प्रोडक्ट लाइन टेबल है और यहाँ पे है प्रोडक्ट टेबल. यहाँ पे है प्रोडक्ट टेबल, यहाँ पे प्रोडक्ट लाइन टेबल. तो प्रोडक्ट लाइन में ये दोनों को ज्वाइन करना कैसा है? ये 1 to 1 है और ये 0 to ये है. ऐसा ऐसा इन दोनों का रिलेशनशिप. तो वो अपने को कैसा है कि राइट हैंड साइड देयर इज नोटेशन which has shown 0 and multiple line. How do you read that? Let's write down this. Every product line which is on the left hand side associated with 0. Just a minute, I'll give you two sentences. Every product line which is on the left hand side, product line कहाँ पे? Left hand side पे, यहाँ पे, and ये है product. तो every product line is associated with 0 or more products. Why 0 or more product? Because यहाँ पे 0 लिखा है ना, ये 0 है और ये 1 है. तो product line, every product line is associated with 0 or 1 product. Every product line is associated with 0 or 1 product over there. The next thing, next क्या है? sentence number one for you for this cardinality. Then you go to other side, which is product. अभी product के side पे जाओ, right hand side पे. You go to other uh, side, right hand side, that is a product. Now see, there is on the other side, what is the notation is, there's, you are seeing two lines. Product को दो line है यहाँ पे. If you see, these are the two lines. What do you mean by these two lines? Says that every product must necessarily be associated with product line. In other words, you see two marks that you can interpret those marks as being minimum and maximum. You can see that particular case you are seeing two ones. There is, means minimum is one, maximum is one, right? Minimum one है, left hand side का रहता है minimum, right hand side का रहता है maximum. So every product is associated with minimum one product line or maximum one product line. Every product must be associated with minimum one product line and maximum one product line. Now, is this thing clear for you? How do you put it in the statements? Is it clear? I'm taking it slow because I will be asking few questions related to this. So मैं क्या लिख सकता हूँ? Product or product line. Every product must be associated with a minimum of one product line and a maximum of one product line. Okay, so let's play this two sentence game with another example. Let's play this two sentence game with another example. Let us look at product and order details. Do we have product and order details? देखो, product and order details है यहाँ पे. What do you think इसका relation क्या रहेगा?
One to many.
One to many.
Many.
So दो दो सेंटेंस में कैसे लिख पाओगे आप और कैसे बोल पाओगे?
So like quite difficult to, मतलब जिस तरह से आपने बताया उस तरह से बताने में थोड़ा मुश्किल है, लेकिन हम वन टू मेनी का रिलेशनशिप बता सकते हैं. जिस तरह से वो कोई एक टेबल है, वो मेनी मतलब कई तरीकों से किसी और टेबल के साथ रिलेट रिलेट कर सकता है. Like it's very easy to understand the take the example of book and page.
देखो अभी
One,
मुझे वन टू मेनी का मतलब प्रोडक्ट का ऑर्डर डिटेल के साथ वन टू मेनी रिलेशन, तो इसका मीनिंग क्या है? मुझे वो एक्सप्लेनेशन चाहिए ना, उसका मीनिंग क्या है?
यस, जिस तरह से ऑर्डर आईडी है, ऑर्डर आईडी एक ही रहती है. हम विद द हेल्प ऑफ वन ऑर्डर आईडी वी कैन प्लेस मिनी प्रोडक्ट्स.
विद द हेल्प ऑफ
ऑर्डर आईडी वी कैन मेक मिनी प्रोडक्ट्स. हम एक ऑर्डर आईडी की मदद से कई प्रोडक्ट प्लेस कर सकते हैं.
नहीं, गलत बोला. प्रोडक्ट आईडी से लेके ऑर्डर डिटेल तक मेनी है, ऑर्डर
ओके,
डिटेल से प्रोडक्ट के लेके वन है.
वन है.
तो every order detail is associated with only one product, but one product can be associated with multiple order detail. ऐसा, right? Is it clear?
ओके सर.
Now, what we are doing is, so ER diagram. ER diagram क्या है? It's an entity relationship diagram or entity relationship model. Is a notation to indicate three things about your database design. It indicates what all are the data types, sorry, entity types in your design, what are the attributes, and as part of this entity types talks about the relationship. ये तीन चीजों का वो डिस्कस करते हैं. कैन बी ऑफ थ्री टाइप्स. वन टू वन रिलेशनशिप रहता है, वन टू वन, sorry, one to many, and many to many. We can we can have slight variation by specifying 0 or 1 on any other side, which is very understandable. Now, uh, so if you are using any tool, if you use Excel or if you use SQL, the way of this tool shows you what data is available can be very confusing and they're actually quite intimidating as well. So that when you understand how to interpret the symbols in a diagram, it becomes very useful. It becomes very useful to get a quick snapshot of what data is available and what is the relationship. How do you access that data from that data? Now, how do you navigate this becomes very obvious. If you learn how to understand the entity relationship diagram notation, you will be able to understand the entire data or entire relationship, entire entity, entire data in your thing. So ये हो गया entity relationship diagram in which we have discussed what do you mean by entity, what do you mean by what we can say entity type, entity attribute, and relationship. I think it's very clear for you. Let's not waste our time on this. Let's go to star schema now. What is star schema? So there is one more thing in which it is known as self-referential relationship. Self-referential relationship. What do you mean by this self-referential relationship? There's
Self
another
join.
type of relationship called as self-referential. Yes, yes. Anybody wants
So it
to
can
say? Hmm?
it can be said as a self join, like manager ID and employee ID. Like if the one is the employee ID, then there is a higher manager of that employee. Then there is a two employee, second number of employee. Then one is the manager of employee number two, like that.
Hmm. Right, right, right. Very good. See, so for example, I'll give you a table. You'll understand at that point of time itself. I have a player name, then I have player role, I have captain, I have vice captain, right? So captain and vice captain are same. Let it be any uh, right. So what I'll do is I'll take this out and मैं इसको paste करूँगा, मतलब drag करूँगा नीचे. Now I can have player like KL Rahul, I can have Rohit Sharma, I can have Virat Kohli, I can have Shreyas Iyer, I can have Rishabh Pant, Ravindra Jadeja, right? R Ashwin, then Hardik, and Bhuvi, let's say Mohammad Shami, and Jasprit Bumrah, right? इसको थोड़ा इज्जत देते, भुवनेश्वर बोलते. So what do you think now? What is self-referential constraint? Yes. See, this is a batsman. तो ये कॉपी करके ये पेस्ट कर रहा हूँ मैं. विराट कोहली is batsman, Shreyas Iyer batsman is batsman, Ravindra Jadeja is all-rounder, right? So I'll take this, paste it over here, paste it over here, और ये सारे बॉलर है, right? Now, table given below has a self-referential relationship because Virat Kohli is the captain for every player, right? But he is a player himself. But he is a player himself, right? Similarly, same applies to Rohit Sharma, who is vice captain for the team. So, uh, yeah. So this is known as self-referential constant. I think it is clear. It's clear for you now. We can take a break. I'll give you a few assignments related to this. I'll upload the assignments question in your drive. Now let's have a break. Before that, if you have any questions, you can ask everyone. Yes, anybody have any questions, any doubts?
Sir, where we have to upload the assignments?
Assignments I will give you on the drive. I'll give you on the drive. It's not uploaded now.
Okay, sir.
I have to create this. I have assignments, but I have to create it in separate folder. It's not understood. Why it's not understood? Go cool. Referential integrity. सेल्फ रेफरेंशियल ना, सेल्फ रेफरेंशियल का मीनिंग क्या है कि खुद को ही, अभी विराट कोहली क्या है, ही इज अ कैप्टन, राइट? बट वो प्लेयर भी है ना, इज अ प्लेयर हिमसेल्फ। तो वो दो की रोल परफॉर्म कर रहा है यहाँ पे। ही इज अ कैप्टन फॉर ऑल द प्लेयर्स एंड ही इज अ प्लेयर हिमसेल्फ। सो इन अदर वर्ड मैनेजर, अभी एम्प्लॉय का कोई मैनेजर है और वो मैनेजर खुद भी एम्प्लॉय है, राइट? ऐसे, राइट? Can you see this employee in employee column? We have employee 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But employee 1 का manager null है because he is a manager of himself. But in other words, employee 1, employee 2 का manager है, employee 2, employee 3 का manager है, employee 2, employee 4 का manager है, और employee 3, employee 5 का manager. Right? This is known as self-join. This is known as self-referential constant. I think it's clear now. Yes? Oh, cool. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
ठीक है. Now, I think we can take a break. Let's have a break for 15 minutes at least. Then we'll go to next part, which is a star schema. And after that star schema, we'll just summarize whatever is discussed. What is our next part? Our next part is star schema, no? entity relationship diagram is discussed, let's discuss the star schema. So what is a star schema? Yeah, what is a star schema?
Like when there is a relation between two or more tables, it form a relation just like a star. That's we are called a star schema.
Mhm. Right, right. So let's say, let's take an example first. By now, you must have a fair idea. By now, you must have a fair idea about star schemas, constraint, and ERDs, entity relationship diagram. Now, we'll go through an example of a star schema and understand how it makes a database designing simpler and more intuitive. So, let's watch or let's start this. Uh, we have, we'll now take a complete case study of doing analysis on a star schema by using SQL. So what we are going to do is almost end to end. We'll begin by looking at the design of the star schema. We'll go into SQL, and within SQL, we'll look at the constructs that are needed all the way from creating the database, creating the schema, to working with the data. How do you add the data? And eventually, we'll spend a significant amount of time trying to learn how to use SQL, right? So what you have in front of you is star schema. So let's take a star schema over here. Let's take a star schema. Let's take this one. Let's take this one. Copy this, paste it over here. Right, this is your star schema. Now, eventually, we'll spend a significant amount of discussing this amount of time trying to learn the star schema. So what is there in star schema? There's a central. What is there in star schema? There's a central fact table. तो सेंटर में क्या रहता है? There is a central fact table that you have, and there are lots of dimensions. Yes or no? What do you mean by fact? Yes.
Table
What do you
with
mean by fact?
numerical data.
Duplicate
Numerical.
values present.
Right. Numerical data. Very good. So there is a central fact table, and there are lots of dimensions that are associated with the particular fact table. The fact table contains some quantitative data that we want to analyze, and dimension table represents the metadata associated with those fact tables, right? So, for example, if I'm saying whatever 10,000 rupees is the sales that constitutes as the fact data that I can associate it with multiple, can be associated with multiple dimensions, right? I can say that this 10,000 corresponds to this specific product, called a computer, right? And this was shipped by a priority air, and this is a specific order when it's placed by when it is placed on a particular date. This belongs to a particular customer, right? So these are the dimensions associated with the number called 10,000. तो 10,000 क्या है? सेल्स है, और डायमेंशंस क्या है कि कैसे वो डिलीवर हुआ है, एयर मतलब डिलीवरी टाइप और डेट बिलोंग्स टू विच कस्टमर, राइट? ये क्या हो गए? ये डायमेंशंस हो गए. So how do you capture it in design? So we have a central fact table which is refers to as market fact. और यहाँ पे क्या है sale item. It essentially a fact table. I said I said fact table must be necessary contain fact variables. तो fact table में आपके पास सिर्फ और सिर्फ क्या होता है, fact variable होते हैं, right? So it's a quantitative attribute which is capturing something that I want to analyze. As you can see, a particular example, the attributes that would come satisfy the fact variable definitions are sales, discount order, quantity, product quantity, and shipping cost. यहाँ पे क्या है? Sale date, posted date, customer ID, location ID, product ID, sum of quantity, sum of items cost. तो वो क्या हो गए? क्या हो गए वो? Facts हो गए. So there are 6 or 7 fact variables that are associated uh, for that are available for my analysis, right? So this constitute a fact variable, right? If you recall our earlier discussion on star schema, that variables are typically numerical, a quantitative attribute in nature. When you can see that other attributes that are present as well as we have product ID, location ID, market fact ID, which is it's a fact variable. So how many dimension do you see for a particular star schema? Right there, there are 1, 2, 3, and 4 dimensions, right? We have location dimension, period dimension, product dimension, and customer dimension. In other words, every fact is going to have 4 tags. Every fact is going to have 4 tags, right? These ID attributes that I just read out correspond to those 4 tags. Let's say ये customer ID है. This belongs to 4 tags over there. Location, customer, product, and period. Right? I just read it. In relational database terminology, you will recall that they are refers to as your right foreign keys. Dimensions are referred to as foreign key. If you see, in other words, in very simple words, if you observe variables, fact are your, for example, sale date, posted date, customer ID, location ID, product ID, sum of quantity, sum of item cost. That are your, or in other words, let's say customer ID, location ID, product ID. ये क्या है? Can I say it as primary key? Right? Other than we have ordered ID, shipping ID, वो भी रह सकता है. And ये जो dimension है, that are nothing but your foreign keys. They are referred to as foreign keys because they refer to the set of values that cannot exist, which means we are saying that in my fact variable, I can record sales of only those product which exist in my product dimension table, right? So it's a foreign key. So essentially a brief overview of star schema, you will see that this particular schema is significantly different from other types of entity relationship diagram schemas that you would have seen, because I mentioned earlier what we were talking about online analytical processing, right? Or data warehouse. We have talked about this. So on, in order to do good amount of analysis, it is better to organize your data in the form of star schema, and that is why this is the structure that we are going to be using throughout this particular segment. So why star schema is required? Somebody had asked this question earlier, no, last weekend. Why it is required? Because in order to do good amount of analysis, it is better to organize your data in the form of star schema. And this is why this is the structure that we are going to be using throughout this particular segment. Now, is it clear, everyone, what is star schema?
Yes, sir.
So in this way, we'll quickly add a summary for this module. What is summary? In this session, we learned the following. What is data warehouse? The difference between a data warehouse and what? What we have discussed is difference between data warehouse and transactional database. We have OLAP, is online analytical processing system, a subject oriented, integrated, non-volatile, time variant. And a data warehouse provides an integrated view of an entire organization. The data is organized for carrying out analysis efficiently. Facts and dimension and how to arrange them in order to design the data warehouse. We have discussed dimension tables act as metadata, which is data about data, and enhance the facts table to enhance the insights from the data. What is a star schema is? We have discussed this. We have discussed the advantages of having star schema in a database. We have discussed ACTL, right? To discuss facts and dimensions. We have discussed dimension table. What is star schema? Advantages of having star schema. The SCTL process. Different types of constraint. And ERDs and their constituents. Right? This summarizes our module number 1. That is database design module. Database design module. Right? Now let us go to the next module, which is module number 2, in which we are going to understand database creation in MySQL workbench. So I'll just quickly save this and I'm going to upload it on your drive. What is this? No. SQL, this file upload. Right, replace. So it's done. Now let us create new Excel workbook for the module number 2, which is just a minute, database creation. So In this database creation, we are going to study module 2, which is database creation in MySQL workbench. In this thing, we are going to discuss an introduction. We are going to discuss introduction to DDL and DML statements. Third is we are going to discuss DDL, a demonstration on that. So basically we'll do it practically. DML, a demonstration on that. Fifth is modifying columns. How do you modify the columns? And last but not the least, we're going to have a practice exercise. On DDL and DML statements. And last is a summary. So this summarizes your model number 2, which is database creation, right? So I'll rename this as syllabus, and I'm going to color this. All right. So first point, introduction. We'll begin this session with an example that is fairly commonplace in the lives of many, the hospital visit, right? Recall the last time you went to the hospital as a patient, you have observed that the receptionist asked for your details. The basic details may include your name, right? Basic details may include your name, then your age, your gender, right? Your address, your address, uh, just a minute, your phone number, etc. Right? Some additional details could include information on vaccination, medical history, details of family illness, and so on. Additional details भी अगर आप वो लेते हो तो vaccinations, medical history, details of family illness, right? And so on. Based on the information that you provide, the receptionist may assign you to a specific doctor, ward, and nurse for the treatment. Now, how are these decisions made in almost real time? Well, this is how it all happens. All the data that you provide, along with the data pertaining to the hospital, is stored in some database. ये सारा data जो है, it is stored in some database. Yes or no, everyone? Operations are performed on the database to return some relevant results so that the authorities involved can act accordingly. But how all this exactly done? What are the tools and languages that are involved in the processes? In this session, we are going to walk you through the database retrieval language that is used in RDBMS, which is structured query language. So there are many RDBMS management system. There are n number of RDBMS. We have, for instance, we have MySQL, we have Oracle, we have MS Access, right? We have SQL Server, we have Postgres, and you'll be introduced to MySQL in this thing. And the platform that we will use in order to retrieve the required data is MySQL Workbench. right? So everyone, you make sure you are downloading this today itself so that we can start working on this, right? So in this session, you will be introduced to a certain basic SQL commands. SQL is one of the strongest tools for data manipulation and it is used heavily across all industries. By the end of this session, you would be able to use MySQL database and write basic SQL queries to retrieve relevant information from the typical databases, right? So, ये हो गया आपका introduction. This sums up your introduction for this course, for this module. Third you have is, what was the third? It is, okay. Second. Introduction to DML and DDL, no? Intro to DML and DDL. All right. So, okay. So, in this segment, we'll demonstrate the MySQL Workbench command, tools that are used to create the schemas and tables. You would be able to install the MySQL Workbench on your machine. I'll give you link for installation if it's not working for you, but you'll get it on YouTube. It's not that difficult. After installing SQL on your machine and learning about the basic components and terms associated with SQL, we are going to learn more about entire set of commands that are available in SQL. So let's start to understand what do we mean by DDL and DML commands. So it's good that uh, we have seen how our star schema is going to look like. It is time to get our hands dirty and start writing some code, right? We are going to be using a language called SQL for doing this particular code, right? And I'm sure all of you understand or know what SQL is, just what SQL is, but just as a quick recap, I'll give you a very quick overview of what SQL is all about, right? SQL stands for Structured Query Language. Structured Query Language. Uh, so this is the language that is understood by all relational database management system products, including Oracle, MySQL, PostgreSQL, IBM, DB2, and MS SQL Server. It's understood by all of this product, right? So all of these products that a great part of our SQL, which means that it is really important and very useful to be an expert in SQL, right? So SQL is I believe it's not, I mean, it's not a relatively difficult programming language compared to language like Java, C, Python, or whatever it is, right? It's very simple as compared to Java, C, or Python. Why? Because whatever maybe it will be, the strength of SQL comes in the fact that it is expressed in the form of short statements which get executed immediately, right? Unlike your other programming language environments where you write the program, you have to compile it, when you have to run it, and so on. SQL is very simple, so that it is why it is referred to as declarative language. It's very simple. It is referred to as declarative language, which means you just declare, make some statements here and there, and then things happen, right? At the very basic level, the SQL has got two components of the language, right? One is data definition language. Another is data manipulation language, right? One is DDL, one is DML. Now you'll understand, you'll ask, what is this? What is DML? What is DDL? So other part is DML, which is abbreviated as data manipulation language. So the DDL is the language to specify what my tables are, what the columns in my tables are, and what are my constraint are. That is why it is called as data definition language, right? So there are only four keywords or four commands that you have to learn in this thing. First is create, second is alter, third is drop. Create, alter, drop. This constitutes the core DDL commands for manipulating your schema itself. So you want to create a new table, you have to use a create command. You want to modify existing table, you have to use uh, you have to modify existing table, you have to use alter command. You want to remove existing table, you have to do the drop command, right? Create table, modify table, create table, modify existing table, and delete or remove existing table. You have to do drop, right? So there is a fourth command which can be used at both, which can be used both across DDL and DML, which is select command. So select आप दोनों में use कर सकते हो. It can be used over here, it can be used over there. So it summarizes your DDL. So I'll kind of talk about the select command completely later on, but at the core DDL, which has got this three commands called create, alter, table. So what is that? I can create you can create anything in the schema. What do we mean by anything in the schema? I can create tables, I can create views, I can create constraint. So I can create में क्या है? Table, views, and constraints. Right? I can create this three. And of course, when you say tables, along with that columns as well. Similarly, I can alter or modify existing tables, existing columns, existing views, existing constraint. Similarly, I can drop tables, columns, views, and constraint using all these three commands together. This is all it takes. Manager database structure. Now you have done all the hard work and created your database structure. Now comes the time to work with the actual data itself. For the set of commands which work with the data, it is referred to as DML, data manipulation language. And here we insert, update, and delete as three corresponding commands over here. So in DML, we have insert, we have update, and we have delete. And I am writing select as over here. Right? So this summarizes your entire thing. Which means if I want to insert new rows of data, I have to use insert command. If I want to modify existing rows of data or columns of data, I have to use update command. Or if I want to remove some rows of data from tables, I have to use the delete command. You know, the parallel is similar. Here we have create, alter, drop. Here we have create, alter, drop. Here you have insert, update, delete. Both effectively do the same thing, but one operates on the schema objects like tables and other operates on the actual data. One operates on the schema, other operates on the table, right? And of course, especially when you're working with the data, the select is the one that we can use to retrieve the data from the database. So what does it come down to? It all SQL boils down to learning the syntax corresponding to the 7 commands. Even among 7 commands, DDL is something that is used very, very rarely in the life cycle of a database. DDL is used very, very rarely in our database. So it is used only once at the very beginning when I'm creating database. It is used only at the beginning when I'm creating a database, right? So once you can even afford to forget the DDL. Once it is created, we are not going to use that. So to speak right now, when it comes to DML, among the DML, most important command is command is select, especially for analysis, because when you are doing analysis, most of the time you are working with the data that was inserted by somebody else, which was modified by somebody else, correct? So as long as you are not one who is developing database applications, if you ask me, you can even afford to forget insert, update, and delete statements. Of course, you have to answer, but you have to answer questions in the interview. So don't tell me that I ask you to forget what you have forgotten it, right? So you have to remember these 7 commands, but in more practical sense, among all these 7 commands, your best friend for life is going to be S is to select command. So make sure you practice and pay a lot of attention to the exercises that are being given on the select command, of course. I'll show you about other commands as well. A good familiarity is sufficient for those rest of commands, and they are simple enough as well, right? So select can get a bit dodgy sometimes, so you'll require more practice, but that is the most important of all the you will have to work with. So we are going to get working with the SQL now. If you have understanding of this, now we'll stop here for the day. It's 6:27. If anybody is having any questions, you can ask over here. So we have just started SQL now. It was just a prior prerequisite knowledge that we were discussing. Anybody have any questions now in SQL?
No, sir.
Start
Yeah, go ahead.
any site where we can practice SQL.
Sorry.
Any site where we can
Anytime.
practice SQL.
As of now, don't worry. I'll not give you, but I'll provide you after some time, after some
Oh,
days.
okay.
Right. So this is